Sophisticated guided missile cruiser, and it's steaming up the Houston Ship Channel. It is the USS San Jacinto, and it is here for a week-long commissioning ceremony. The USS San Jacinto steamed in one day late because of yesterday's heavy fog, but today's weather was picture perfect. Ron Regan is at the San Jacinto Monument now to tell us about the cruiser named after the battle that won Texas her independence. Ron?
Bill, it is nearly 2 football fields long, and it costs $1 billion. So you can bet that the United States Navy takes this very seriously. This is actually the 10th such highly sophisticated, high-tech cruiser to be built in the last couple of years. The Navy is sinking a whole lot into this, and that is why this story is so important. The United States government is banking that this is going to be very important to protect aircraft carriers, primarily aircraft carriers, and fleets in the Pacific and the Atlantic against such attacks as we've seen, like in the USS Stark incident. Let me show you what this looked like a moment ago, about 90 minutes ago, when this steamed into the dock here at the Houston Ship Channel. It was quite a sight to see. When the San Jacinto came around the bend, you can see the people. It was just a tremendous amount of excitement. Some of those folks there actually drove from other states so that they could see husbands who were on board. Let me tell you a few facts about this ship. The missiles on board, there are about 122 missiles below the deck. You can't see them, they are hidden, but if they needed them at a moment's notice, they could come up and readily be fired. Some of those missiles can travel 1,000 miles in a split second. Let me show you something about this here. This is fascinating. What you're looking at right there is part of the Aegis tracking system. It is a very super sophisticated computer tracking system. Doesn't look like much there, it just looks like a shield on the side of that wall. But if in fact they needed it, they could track missiles coming in 360 degrees in just a matter of 15 seconds. From the time they saw an incoming missile, they could track it, identify it, and shoot it down. Very super sophisticated. We will have much more on the San Jacinto and the reaction among the folks who are here today at 6 o'clock. Back to you.
Okay, Ron, that looks like a fascinating piece of military hardware.
Pretty neat stuff there.
The Aegis missile system. It is a truly incredible piece of hardware. Doug?
San Jacinto has finally made it past the battleground from whence it takes its name. Here is Ron Regan with the 4th fighting ship to bear that proud name.
I see all the water, no ship yet.
The anticipation began 3 hours before the ship was sighted. Every eye trained on the water. Finally,
There it is.
There's the bow right there.
There it is. You can see the very beginning of it right there.
the guns on board responded with a 21-gun salute, usually reserved for foreign countries, this time honoring the Republic of Texas and the battlefield that saw its birth.
The guns were loud.
There's a giant replica of all the things in his room.
Its crew of 375 lined up on deck. This is the 4th warship in history to carry the San Jacinto name. Leo Calentuno served on board the 3rd San Jacinto during World War II.
Well, it's like a lump in my throat, you know what I mean? I enjoyed being aboard that ship, the one during World War II, and we had a good crew. They claim one of the best, and it just brings back old memories, you know?
And some Houstonians who turned out today can actually remember raising money to build the 3rd San Jacinto during World War II.
The elementary schools, they sold war bonds and that. We didn't have a lot, but we bought stamps on stamp day, and
a lot of memories it brings back.
Up here on the bridge is the nerve center of an incredibly sophisticated warship, complete with some space-age technology. A computer radar tracking system. Nothing gets by it. But today's salute is not to technology, but to the spirit of Texans who fought for liberty. Ron Regan, Channel 2 News.
By the way, it's with a 1-year money-back guarantee on parts and services. Finally tonight, a welcome to the guided missile cruiser, the USS San Jacinto. It glided past the monument and exchanged salutes with the shore battery today. The ship's crest and seal says victory is certain. That's what Sam Houston said before the San Jacinto battle. But it was just a hope then. It turned out to be a statement of fact. There are no guarantees for Sam and his men at San Jacinto in 1836, just as there are no guarantees for the ship and its men today. We welcome the 4th ship to be called San Jacinto, and are reminded that if victory is indeed certain, then vigilance will be its price. Good night, neighbors.
The USS San Jacinto finally eased into the port of Houston this afternoon, a day after being delayed because of the thick fog. A large crowd was on hand to greet the Navy's newest guided missile cruiser. The ship is named for the battle that led to Texas independence. It's the fourth ship to be called the San Jacinto. Official commissioning ceremonies are scheduled for Saturday morning. Vice President George Bush is expected to attend. And the San Jacinto arrived today with much fanfare. But for the last several nights, she had been out in the Gulf of Mexico off the Texas coast. Reporter Nancy Holland and photographer Jimmy Wong were on board. They have more on the Texans who served aboard the Navy's newest ship.
Just as the battle for which she is named inspires pride in Texans, so the San Jacinto inspires pride in those who serve aboard her. They use words like sleek and energetic to describe her. Formidable and powerful would also fit. Besides her guns, she can also carry more than 120 cruise missiles. It's impossible to tell the story of the San Jacinto from her decks. The real story of the ship and the men who run her is in the very heart of the ship. It is inside the Combat Information Center that computerized war is fought. At one sonar screen is a Houston man, Mike Amundsen. He is third-generation Navy and says he got interested in sonar because of research. Now he looks for and listens to ships and the subtle sounds that distinguish friends from enemies.
Each ship and submarine has its own fingerprint, if you want to call it. Like each man and woman have their own fingerprints for identification purposes.
But what looks like a walk-in video arcade is very real. Another Texan, Mark Helms, says he joined the Navy when the oil field went bust. Now he is proud of being on board what he believes is the most sophisticated warship in the world.
Would I be scared about taking the ship into battle? No, ma'am. This would be the safest ship to be on in the Navy if we have to go and take care of whatever job that's necessary.
But for all the Texas pride in the ship, there is also the hope that no one will ever have to find out just how formidable she really is. Nancy Holland, 11 News.
Heavy fog delayed her arrival by a day, but the Navy's newest guided missile cruiser finally arrived at the port of Houston today. The San Jacinto was greeted by lots of fanfare, including a 21-gun salute. It's perhaps the most sophisticated warship in the world, with an arsenal that includes 120 cruise missiles.
Would I be scared about taking the ship into battle? No, ma'am. This would be the safest ship to be on in the Navy if we have to go and take care of whatever job that's necessary.
This is the fourth Navy vessel to be named after that famous Texas battle. She'll be commissioned on Saturday.
Should we join the Navy now?
Well, I'm ready.
We'll talk about it anyway. After several days at sea, the USS San Jacinto has finally docked at the port of Houston. It's a billion-dollar Navy ship, and it carries a lot of significance for the state of Texas.
And right now, our Deborah Wrigley is standing by live to tell us more about it.
Melanie, you can say with certainty that our ship is in. What you're seeing behind me is the USS San Jacinto that is named in honor of the San Jacinto battlefield. The last one was an aircraft carrier built in World War II, and it was later scrapped. This class of carrier, though, is always named for a famous battlefield. But the San Jacinto went a step further, and it drew its motto from a page of Texas history, that motto being, "Victory is certain." The last part, you may recall, is "Remember the Alamo."
100 miles out in the Gulf, the last leg of the San Jacinto's maiden voyage as a private vessel. It's the newest addition to the Navy fleet, and as such, it has the most defense sophistication $1 billion can buy. Weaponry is what gives the San Jacinto its reputation as the deadliest ship on the sea. There are Gatling guns, 3,000 rounds a minute, and a computerized defense system that direct guns with almost pinpoint accuracy. The 72-pound bullet just fired here can travel up to 20 miles within inches of its target. The missiles, though, can hit within a quarter inch. And for detection, there's a radar that distinguishes friendly aircraft from enemy, sensitive enough to affect videotape cameras as well. That's the power it packs, reserved for the conflicts of confrontation and war. Today, though, the San Jacinto is welcome to the battlefield for which it's named.
And what you're seeing back there is a barbecue that's being given in honor of the crew of the San Jacinto, 357 sailors in all. They are being reunited with their families who've chosen to come down to Houston to see them after being on the sea for 6 days. They will, however, have to return to the ship tonight because every morning they're practicing the ceremonies for the time on Saturday when the San Jacinto will officially be turned over to the Navy. Back to you.
Okay, and then, Deborah, from there it stays where?
From there, the San Jacinto will go to Norfolk, and there it will undergo about a year's worth of shakedown cruises.
Okay, Deborah, thank you very much.
Its motto, victory is certain, named for the battle that gained Texas her independence. The USS San Jacinto giving a 21-gun salute this afternoon as she glided by her namesake. And in return, National Guardsmen by the monument, they were returning that salute.
Think of that gun salute. Great, great. What does it mean to you? Home and country. We're number one.
Even a late day, or even a day late because of fog, enthusiasm was undaunted. It's all part of the commissioning ceremonies for the billion-dollar guided missile cruiser, USS San Jacinto, the latest addition to the nation's fleet. And it wasn't because it didn't have the technology to get up the river, the ship channel because of the fog. It was ship channel regulations.
Right. The ship San Jacinto remains at the port of Houston tonight. She'll be here in town until Monday, waiting to be commissioned on Saturday. The Navy is making sure that those who come to see her have plenty of chances to walk away with a souvenir. The crew has opened a giant ship store. They say they expect to sell about 10,000 shirts and at least 9,000 baseball caps. They've already had some buyers. The money goes to the crew's entertainment fund. She'll be here in town until Monday, waiting to be commissioned on Saturday. The Navy is making sure that those who come to see her have plenty of chances to walk away with a souvenir. The crew has opened a giant ship store. They say they expect to sell about 10,000 shirts and at least 9,000 baseball caps. They've already had some buyers. The money goes to the crew's entertainment fund.
For most of us, going on a field trip when we were in school was a pretty big deal. Well, it still is for youngsters, especially when that field trip is to the USS San Jacinto. Nancy Holland went on board with a group of fourth graders from the Maid Creek Elementary School.
This was the day the fourth graders have been waiting for, the day they got to go aboard. They've been writing to the crew for about 6 months now, and they came prepared with a giant card to present and a song about San Jacinto, the battle for which the ship was named.
36, Santa Anna and his army found themselves in one bad fix. San Jacinto, San Jacinto.
And then they got the tour that took them to the decks to see the ship's weapons.
Inside of these, each of these hatches are where we would normally have what we call standard missiles.
And what was one of the highlights for many, the ship's helicopter, where they actually got to sit in the pilot's seat, if only for a few minutes.
You know what flag that is?
They seemed impressed with the way the ship was decked with flags for the commissioning ceremony and with the view from the bridge. It was enough to convince some of them that life at sea might be fun.
I would like to drive it. I think it'd be pretty neat.
And the tour took them to the Combat Information Center, the very heart of the ship where battles would be fought. These video screens are not games, but ways to detect and attack subs.
We really don't like submarines all that much because they sneak around underneath the water, and if we're ever, heaven forbid, end up in a war, they try to sink us.
Their teacher says she hopes this helps them understand history and the Navy. They had their own ideas of what was important.
The computer systems, because I'm learning a lot about new technology. The helicopter, because it it shoots torpedoes and it can hit submarines and stuff under the water. I like eating the best. I think it was terrific.
The Navy, of course, considers this ship an awesome weapon. So far, her battle has been one of public relations. And here in Houston, she has been formidable at that. Nancy Holland, 11 News.
Some fourth graders from the Maid Creek Elementary School got to live out a fantasy today. They've been writing to the crew of the USS San Jacinto for the last 6 months or so. Today they got to spend some time aboard and to learn how that ship really works. Their tour took them from the helicopter pad to the bridge. They were all over the place. The teacher says she hopes that they learn a little bit about history from all this, but one of the kids summed it all up by saying the ship was pretty neat.
Tomorrow, the big day when the USS San Jacinto is brought into commission by Vice President George Bush. And today, some shipmates who served on its predecessor arrived to give the new ship a once-over. 157 men who fought during World War II on the USS San Jacinto aircraft carrier toured the new missile cruiser this afternoon. Along with their wives, they viewed firsthand the advances made in technology to fight effectively in combat. One of the men who fought along with them was Vice President George Bush, and his former shipmates say they are proud to have served with him.
Any guy that would do what he did with a plane, hit the drink, and stay in that raft until picked up by a submarine takes a lot of guts.
Vice President Bush will commission the new USS San Jacinto tomorrow. The festivities set for 11 a.m. at Dock 32 at the Port of Houston. Dock 32 at the Port of Houston.
Republican hopeful George Bush had an audience of thousands today, but he was not the main attraction. Bush helped commission the USS San Jacinto, the Navy's state-of-the-art cruiser docked at the Port of Houston. Larry Otis has the story.
The men, the ship, the ceremony, the commissioning of the USS San Jacinto, a vessel named for the fight that freed Texas. San Jacinto, a billion-dollar guided missile cruiser, chartered today with full-scale fanfare. Randall Moore and Sons are impressed.
I think it's great. I think, you know, I'm almost choked up, but it's a great ship. My boys, I hope they grow up to be on something like this, too.
Already aboard, heart, soul, and body, is Jim Seeley.
It's my home, my job, future. Everything else I live for.
San Jacinto is the third ship to bear the name. These men sailed on the second, an aircraft carrier and crewmates never forgotten by flyboy Cullum Milburn.
We did our part, I think.
They did it with George Bush, the vice president who first pursued victory in the South Pacific.
Anyone who fails to understand the danger of neglecting defense simply ignores one of our history's most oft-repeated lessons.
Back in '44, Lieutenant George Bush flew a plane off the old San Jacinto and was shot down over the Pacific. His mission now is well known, but today even politics plays second fiddle to history. The commissioning of the new San Jacinto.
The Navy says the ship will serve best if it never fires a single shot. Larry Otis, Channel 2 News.
The U.S. Navy's newest warship is officially on the job tonight. The USS San Jacinto was commissioned this afternoon at the historic San Jacinto battlefield. This is the sound for general quarters aboard the U.S. Navy's newest and one of the most sophisticated warships in the world. It's a sound the 370 crew members of the USS San Jacinto hope they never hear for real. She is the only U.S. Navy ship to be commissioned at a battlefield that bears her name. 10,000 watched today as Vice President George Bush, a pilot stationed aboard the aircraft carrier San Jacinto during World War II, delivered the commissioned speech, and he felt right at home.
I speak for my former shipmates who served aboard San Jacinto, and many of them are here, and I'd like to ask them to stand up. I think they're back here somewhere.
Oh, well, I think this is a great occasion to have a ship named after our old ship. We're all here together today, a lot of us.
This is the third Navy ship to carry the historic name San Jacinto. The first one was a steam-powered warship commissioned in 1850. This San Jacinto is a guided missile cruiser and cost $850 million. She is equipped with state-of-the-art fittings, including radar that can track enemy aircraft and missiles within a 250-mile range. The San Jacinto won't remain here in Texas. Home will be the huge Navy base in Norfolk, Virginia. and she eventually will defend our country as part of the Navy's Atlantic Fleet. But this weekend, she proudly sits alongside the battlefield, all dressed up, a symbol of fighting power, but with a mission of peace. And you can go to the battlefield along the ship channel tomorrow if you want to get a close-up look at the new San Jacinto.
The USS San Jacinto, the latest of the naval ships named after the famous battle, was commissioned at the Port of Houston today. It was put into service by Vice President George Bush, who served aboard the last naval vessel to carry the San Jacinto name. It also got a big send-off from some of the Vice President's World War II shipmates. Sam Salcedo reports.
When the San Jacinto, the newest guided missile cruiser, sailed up the ship channel, it wasn't officially in naval service. That comes only after the traditional commissioning. That ceremony today drew thousands of people to Pier 32, and among them were about 100 men who served aboard the San Jacinto that fought in World War II.
I was one of the original crew, and I was on her the whole time until about a week before she was decommissioned in 1946.
Miracle was reunited with fellow seamen who traveled here just for the ceremony.
It's strange to meet people after 40 years or so and trying to put a name to a face.
Recognizing each other was only half the fun.
No, I'm Blackie Adams. I was with Air Group 51, Fighting 51.
Trading stories and reminiscing was the other half. Miracle remembered being at his battle station off the Philippine coast.
I had a kamikaze plane go over my head so close that if I'd have thrown my arm up at arm's length, I'd have lost at least propeller.
These are the men who helped win World War II. Those who didn't make it home were represented by family. Frank Waters was here for his brother Tommy, who was killed overseas.
And he was a roommate of our now Vice President George Bush.
I feel a sense of enormous pride.
George Bush, the young Navy pilot, served on the previous USS San Jacinto. Today, he put the new vessel into service.
I hereby place United States ship San Jacinto in commission. God bless and Godspeed.
With that, the crew boarded, and the new watch took over. The ship was powered up. It got a flyover by some F-14s. And the new USS San Jacinto became naval property and in full military service.
This ship is beautiful. Matter of fact, I wish I could go with her on shakedown. I'd like to see some blue water again.
Sam Salcedo, 11 News.
The USS San Jacinto was officially put into service today by Vice President George Bush, who served on the last ship to bear the San Jacinto name. Well-wishers turned out in force to give the ship a big send-off. Sam Salcedo reports.
When the San Jacinto, the newest guided missile cruiser, sailed up the ship channel, it wasn't officially in naval service. That comes only after the traditional commissioning. That ceremony today drew thousands of people to Pier 32, and among them were about 100 men who served aboard the San Jacinto that fought in World War II.
I was one of the original crew, and I was on her the whole time until about a week before she was decommissioned in 1946.
Miracle was reunited with fellow seamen who traveled here just for the ceremony.
It's strange to meet people after 40 years or so and trying to put a name to a face.
Recognizing each other was only half the fun.
No, I'm Blackie Adams. I was with Air Group 51, Fighting 51.
Trading stories and reminiscing was the other half. Miracle remembered being at his battle station off the Philippine coast.
I had a kamikaze plane go over my head so close that if I'd have thrown my arm up at arm's length, I'd have lost at least propeller.
These are the men who helped win World War II. Those who didn't make it home were represented by family. Frank Waters was here for his brother Tommy, who was killed overseas.
And he was a roommate of our now Vice President George Bush.
I feel a sense of enormous pride.
George Bush, the young Navy pilot, served on the previous USS San Jacinto. Today, he put the new vessel into service.
I hereby place United States ship San Jacinto in commission. God bless and Godspeed.
With that, the crew boarded, and the new watch took over. The ship was powered up. It got a flyover by some F-14s. And the new USS San Jacinto became naval property and in full military service.
This ship is beautiful. Matter of fact, I wish I could go with her on shakedown. I'd I'd like to see some blue water again.
Sam Sasser, 11 News.
Well, history was made in Houston today as Vice President George Bush commissioned a Navy combat ship named for the Battle of Texas Independence.
The Vice President said the USS San Jacinto was another example of how far defense has come under President Reagan. As Tom Cook reports, it was a day of poignant moments and memories.
The USS San Jacinto had come home to be christened near the battleground for which she was named. The 567-foot guided missile cruiser became the third to carry the name and the second San Jacinto to carry the vice president. George Bush had been a pilot on the previous San Jacinto, an aircraft carrier in World War II.
We've shot him off the catapult about 20 times, I'm sure, and it was quite an experience.
In the audience of 10,000 were many of Bush's shipmates who greeted him and the ship as old friends.
This one's air conditioned, and we used to get air when the conditions were right.
If I had to do it over again, I'd do it now.
I wouldn't have missed it for anything in the world.
Texas Senator Phil Graham recalled how Bush had been shot down while flying a mission from the ship.
And this ship is an important part of our effort to honor him here today.
Vice President said the ship with its sophisticated weapons and technology reminded him of a lot of Texans.
So good and so tough that they don't have to fight to keep the peace.
Bush defended the ship's billion-dollar price tag, insisting the Soviets may have changed their image, but not their behavior, and Americans must be willing to pay a high price for freedom.
My friends, we're going to have to fight and fight hard for adequate levels of defense spending in the years ahead.
With that, the USS San Jacinto became the Navy's 570th ship, open to public tours all day Sunday. From here, the San Jacinto sails to Norfolk, Virginia, where it will join the Navy's Second Fleet. And then, in the words of its captain, the San Jacinto, a name synonymous with freedom and independence, will begin protecting just that. Tom Cook, Eyewitness News on the USS San Jacinto.
Vice President George Bush came to Houston today to commission a Navy combat ship named for the Battle of Texas Independence.
Bush says the USS San Jacinto is an example of military improvements under President Reagan. And as Tom Cook reports, today was a day for Texans to remember.
The USS San Jacinto had come home to be christened near the battleground for which she was named. The 567-foot guided missile cruiser became the third to carry the name and the second San Jacinto to carry the vice president. George Bush had been a pilot on the previous San Jacinto, an aircraft carrier in World War II.
We've shot him off the catapult about 20 times, I'm sure.
In the audience of 10,000 were many of Bush's shipmates who greeted him and the ship as old friends.
This one's air conditioned, and we used to get air when the conditions were right.
I wouldn't have missed it for anything in the world.
Texas Senator Phil Graham recalled how Bush had been shot down while flying a mission from the ship.
And this ship is an important part of our effort to honor him here today.
Vice President said the ship with its sophisticated weapons and technology reminded him of a lot of Texans.
So good and so tough that they don't have to fight to keep the peace.
Bush defended the ship's billion-dollar price tag, insisting the Soviets may have changed their image, but not their behavior, and Americans must be willing to pay a high price for freedom. With that, the USS San Jacinto became the Navy's 570th ship, open to public tours all day Sunday. From here, the San Jacinto sails to Norfolk, Virginia, where it will join the Navy's Second Fleet. And then, in the words of its captain, the San Jacinto, a name synonymous with freedom and independence, will begin protecting just that. Tom Cook, Eyewitness News on the USS San Jacinto.
Vice President George Bush here in Houston to commission the Navy's newest and most sophisticated guided missile cruiser, the USS San Jacinto. Hundreds turned out for the Navy's colorful ceremony and to hear the Vice President formally put the new ship into service.
I hereby place United States ship San Jacinto in commission. God bless and Godspeed.
The USS San Jacinto is the third ship to be named after the battle that won Texas's independence. Bush was a fighter pilot aboard the San Jacinto that fought in World War II. He was shot down while flying a mission.
In fact, the day that he was shot down, we were flying, weren't we, Bill? We were in the air off of Chichijima.
Joe Martell served on the same ship with Bush. He and other veterans were honored at today's ceremonies. The vice president urged people to support a strong American defense, and the crowd was treated to a display of the ship's offensive power. It's equipped with the most advanced naval weapon system in the world.
May your eyes, the eyes of our God, as well as the eyes of Texas, be upon San Jacinto.
After the ceremonies, people were allowed to tour the ship. For some, the tour brought memories of their time in the Navy, while others dreamed about the future.
The San Jacinto will continue dock here in Houston through the weekend.
USS San Jacinto attracted more visitors than expected today. In fact, police had to be called out to control traffic close to the area. Thousands of cars filled with people wanting to tour the ship created a major traffic jam. Things got really bad when Navy officials were forced to close the area to visitors this afternoon.
At noon, the Houston Police Department estimated we had 10,000 people in line, which was more than we'd be able to get through the ship by the time we were securing visiting at 5 o'clock.
At least 15,000 people toured the ship today. The USS San Jacinto has been in port the last couple of days for official commissioning ceremonies. The ship heads out to sea tomorrow morning.
Part of the Houston Ship Channel overpass had to be shut down today, and traffic in the area was bumper to bumper at best for most of the day.
That because too many people wanted to see the USS San Jacinto docked at the channel. As Carlos Aguilar reports, thousands of would-be visitors had to be turned away.
I don't know, Frank. Are you saying there's a barricade up there?
That's clear. They just set up a barricade.
So many people wanted to see the state-of-the-art guided missile cruiser, the USS San Jacinto, that Houston police had to close down the off-ramp of the Houston Ship Channel overpass.
It's closed right now. As far as the captain says, there's too many people boarding the ship right now.
But back up over the bridge, motorists were playing a cat-and-mouse game with the law as they stopped to get a look or take a snapshot.
You've got a ticket book in your hand.
Yeah.
Tell me about that. That's for people up here taking pictures.
Well, we wanted to see the ship, and we didn't have a chance because the tours were canceled.
So you're stopping on the bridge. You could get a ticket.
I know, but we'll take a chance. We'll go home now.
Down below, some found a place to park some distance away and walked in hopes of getting aboard. But there was disappointment. They were turned away.
Well, I come all the way over here from LaPorte to see this ship, and they stopped at the bridge and they won't let you in. I said, that's very much a disappointment for a whole lot of people.
They say we can't get on, but at least we can see it from here.
Yeah.
Get as close as we can.
Inside, the Lucky waited in a long line that snaked around the parking lot.
Seems like I've been here since yesterday, but it's fun.
About 2 hours, 15 minutes.
Because the ship's captain had to begin preparing the ship for sail for Monday's early morning departure, he asked that the welcome aboard be canceled. But still, an estimated 6,000 did get to see the ship up close.
The response has been unbelievable. We never expected anything of this nature. I've just talked to the Texas National Guard, and they expected about a third of the people we have here today.
So the ship's crew says this may be the ship's last visit to Houston, unless maybe she'll be docked here should the Houston area be selected for the home port. Carlos Aguilar, Eyewitness News.
Well, fortunately, it had nothing to do with defending our country, but today Navy officials in Houston admitted they were caught off guard.
They say they never expected the throngs of people who came to get a glimpse of the newly commissioned USS San Jacinto docked at the ship channel. Thousands of would-be visitors had to be turned away, and part of the ship channel overpass had to be shut down because of the crowds.
Well, I come all the way over here from LaPorte to see this ship, and they stopped at the bridge and they won't let you in. I said, that's very much a disappointment for a whole lot of people.
I've just talked to the Texas National Guard, and they expected about a third of the people we have here today.
An estimated 6,000 people did climb aboard the state-of-the-art guided missile cruiser. Many who couldn't get on the ship got a peek from the Channel Bridge, at the risk of being ticketed for stopping on the shoulder. Tomorrow morning, the San Jacinto departs for Virginia.
At home, police had their hands full directing traffic and the crowds going to see the USS San Jacinto. Thousands showed up to tour the ship. In fact, so many showed up, the Navy stopped the tours this afternoon, and that left some disappointed people.
I'm very disappointed. My son and I have driven for about 20 miles to get here, and we were very looking forward to the opportunity to see a ship firsthand.
Others did get to see her, though, before the tour closed, and some of the folks who got there too late looked at the mighty missile cruiser through the fence.
After spending several days in Houston, the USS San Jacinto is on its way back to Virginia this evening. The guided missile cruiser left early this morning, 2 days after it was christened by Vice President George Bush. Thousands of people toured that billion-dollar ship, the third named for the Battle of San Jacinto. The newest San Jacinto will join the U.S. Navy's Second Fleet in Norfolk, Virginia.
The Navy's newest warship, the USS San Jacinto, is headed back out to sea. The vessel, which was commissioned on Saturday at the Port of Houston, is now heading back toward its permanent port in Norfolk, Virginia. The ship was open to visitors over the weekend, and boy, did it attract crowds. So many people showed up to tour the San Jacinto yesterday. There was a massive traffic jam at the high bridge over the channel. Folks had to be turned away, but now it is heading home. Biggest turnout for a warship in years as the San Jacinto came, and we hope she'll come back to see us soon. That's our news. We thank you for joining us. Stay warm tonight, neighbors. Good night.